Joining us now, he's the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice and also a counsel for the president, Donald Trump. And that's Jay Sekulow with us. What is your reaction to, number one, that interview with this lawyer, and number two, with Donald Trump Jr.'s emails?
Well, the interview with the lawyer establishes that, in fact, the meeting in reality had nothing to do with anything involving the election. That she was basically lobbying for a change in a law on sanctions and in response to the fact that the Russian adoption law was changed by the Russians. So the purpose of what she said the meeting was, according to the email exchange, or what it actually was, ended up not even being the same thing. But here's what we do know. Nothing happened. She got no documents. No documents were released. No documents were given out. Nothing on Hillary Clinton. No follow-up. No case. No issue. Done.
What about the idea in the email that it does mention in some capacity, and again, this is prior to the DNC email leaks prior to the DNC convention. Right. I mean, if we're looking for a timeline here, but what about the knowledge that Donald Trump, at least in an email, thought it was somebody, operatives, Russian government? Jonathan Turley says no laws have been broken. I know my colleague Greg Jarrett says absolutely not even close to any laws. And yet you're watching all this cable coverage as if this is the most unethical thing that has ever happened.
Yeah, and they're right. Turley's right, and so is Greg Jarrett. There's no law violated. There's no illegality in the meeting. Opposition research is not an unusual discussion within a political campaign. So here's what you've got. No illegality in the meeting, only made more of the fact that nothing actually happened. So, I mean, I understand why the media is jumping on this, but I think what Don Jr. did by releasing the information is just got it out there. Here's what it is. So everybody has the email train here, chain, and at the end of the day, there's nothing to it. Now, the media is going to have, and they already have, they're having their moment, and they're making a big deal about the fact that the meeting took place, and this woman purported to be somebody supposedly affiliated with the Russian government. None of that ended up being true. None of this happened in that context. So what do you really have here? You have a meeting that produced nothing. That's not a crime.
Well, then let me ask this.
That's a violation of the FEC laws, by the way. Forget a crime.
Well,
I mean, Senator Warner calling for Donald Trump Jr. to be brought up on charges of treason? That's a little bit of a desperate plea.
Well, if that's the case, what do we make of, for example, Fusion GPS, Christopher Steele, the former British agent, who was, do we know at this point who was paying for the dossier that ended up with all this false information? And isn't it true that Christopher Steele was paying for information and dirt on Donald Trump?
Yeah, but everybody wants to ignore, what you just raised with the whole Fusion GPS thing.
Well, you need to explain it. Explain this to people.
Like it didn't happen.
Well, explain it in detail so people understand it.
So Fusion GPS it basically was a political operative arm that was in the business of doing opposition research. There's a connection with the Steele dossier, which was the fake dossier on the president.
But a political operative arm of who?
Oh, the primary work is the DNC. That's no secret. Google it. I mean, that's not hard to find out. And this woman had a relationship with them on matters that were being that Fusion GPS was involved in. So everybody's acting like this was. I've always taken the position, Sean, that this was a bit of a setup from the word go. And the idea was to kind of just hoist this up. And apparently, they evidently had no opposition research because they never cared to have opposition research. They wanted to get in with this woman has committed a lot of time to lobbying against the laws in the United States after the Majinsky Act. That's what she was aiming for, and of course that ended up going nowhere.
If any campaign is told by somebody that you think might be associated with a foreign government, oh, we might have information, op research, that you really need to know about your opponent, is there any campaign you could think of that wouldn't take a meeting to hear what they had to say or hear them out?
Look, we know in campaigns that opposition research is in one sense, is the lifeblood of political campaigns. What about the Ukrainian situation with regard to Hillary Clinton getting information on Donald Trump? Everybody wants to, you don't, but everybody else wants to forget that happened. Because that stuff does happen. Here, though, what's interesting in this case, nothing happened. So the end result of it was nothing.
If I go to the Politico in January...
FEC case here. There's nothing.
Let me read from the Politico January 11th of this year, and I keep going back to this because I think it's very pivotal. Donald Trump wasn't the only presidential candidate whose campaign was boosted by officials of a former Soviet bloc country. Ukrainian government officials tried to help Hillary Clinton undermine Trump by publicly questioning his fitness for office. They disseminated documents implicating a top Trump aide in corruption and suggested that they were investigating the matter, only to back away after the election. They helped Clinton allies research damaging information on Trump and his advisors, according to a Politico investigation. A Ukrainian-American operative who was consulting for the Democratic National Committee met with top officials in the Ukraine embassy in Washington in an effort to expose ties between Trump, top campaign aide Paul Manafort, Russia, according to people with direct knowledge. These efforts did have an impact on the race, helping force Manafort's resignation, advancing the narrative that Trump's campaign. Now, here's my question. And they also found that the Ukrainian government, the involvement in the race, appears to strain diplomatic protocol, dictating governments refrain from engaging in another's election. So my question is there any difference, or does this not appear to be worse? And how come most of the media has never, ever raised this question?
Well, I mean, in one situation, you actually had an event that took place that triggered an action and actually produced a result. Here, you don't even have the information that was allegedly going to be exchanged. Not only exchanged, was never in existence in the first place. So the Ukrainian situation is much more politically, I'm not saying legally damaging, politically damaging. This one has got no legal consequence. That's why I keep going back to no illegality, no legal consequence.
So do we know who was paying Christopher Steele, the MI6, former MI6?
No, I know that's still being looked at.
Okay. Now, is that connected directly to Fusion GPS, and is Fusion DPS connected to the DNC?
Well, Fusion GPS is under review right now by the Senate Judiciary Committee under Chuck Grassley. And those questions are being asked now.
All right. So the question is, or what about the case of Prime Minister Netanyahu? I mean, we keep hearing that it's so bad for foreign countries to try and influence.
How about we send money over? Right.
Well, we send
money over to fund his opposition from the United States Treasury. You and I sent the money over via the United States government.
No
one's saying that was a problem.
And Obama sent some of his campaign operatives in an effort to defeat and defeat Benjamin Netanyahu and influence their elections. Yes. Well, why is that never talked about?
Why? Because the media is never going to talk about anything that's negative on President Obama. But he actually sent over operatives and money to an organization that was fighting against the re-election of the Prime Minister of the State of Israel.
Well, the name of that group was Victory 15, V15.
Right.
I guess if you're Donald Trump Jr. today, now he's coming on the program tonight, and I'm going to ask him every question I can possibly think of. There's not going to be anything that's not asked, but I'm also going to use this as an opportunity because the media is going to be tuned in. So I'm going to welcome the mainstream left-wing, conspiracy theory media to my show, and I'm going to spend a little time educating them about all of these instances and challenge them that if they think this is so important and we're going to ask every question tonight, maybe they'll start asking questions about the Ukraine. Maybe they'll start asking questions about Fusion GPS and the dossier about, Trump with hookers urinating on his bed. Maybe we'll ask him, didn't James Comey want to pay Christopher Steele?
Right.
He did, right?
Yeah, that's what we're hearing. Yes.
And we'll ask them, was it appropriate for Bibi Netanyahu to have his number one ally spending taxpayer dollars to defeat him? Against him.
And you know the answer to those, Sean, but this is not only the dual nature of the media, but this is also the dual nature of an accusation. So that's what we have to remember here. What did Donald Trump Jr. do today? He said, here's the emails. There you go.
Why didn't he release it earlier? Wouldn't it have been better, in all honesty, to release it from day one once this Russia thing became hyped and hyped and hyped and hyped, maybe in January?
I'm not representing him, so I don't know what the interests were at play there. It's very hard I never liked a Monday morning quarterback a lawyer's call on something like that.
Yeah.
Because they've got their client. I'm representing another client called the president. So
let me ask about, we also discovered that Hillary Clinton, remember in the debate, she kept saying 17 intelligence agencies.
Or 4.
Well, it turned out to be a big lie.
Right.
Well, all right. Well, then. And aren't there? Well, let me ask this too.
Get away with this.
Well, we know felonies were committed. Do you believe the classified information we're told was on the Comey leak that he sent to the New York Times?
Look, you and I talked about this yesterday. Here's the fact. There's one thing we know for sure about all of this, and that James Comey leaked, and I want to reinstate this very clearly. James Comey leaked a conversation or a series of conversations he had with the President of the United States on a government computer that he put in his government car, put in his government desk until he got fired from his government job, and then he leaked it. Now, if in fact it turns out that there's also on there, in addition to being leaked, which is a violation of the law, classified information, how about the fact that he waived the executive, or tried to, basically without the client's consent, he sent out information about the executive, which was privileged. How about that? No lawyer. I don't hear a lot of lawyers wanting to deal with that one right now on the other side of this, but that's a pretty big deal.
So we have Comey, who may have violated the Records Act, the Espionage Act, potential felonies. Then we have Hillary Clinton mishandling, destroying classified information. Then we have money kicked back to the Clinton Foundation, I believe is a quid pro quo for her signing off on the Uranium One deal. And then we also have Loretta Lynch meeting in the tarmac, and we don't have questions what she was obstructing justice and colluding with the Clintons. Then we have the whole Ukrainian DNC and Hillary campaign issue.
Right.
I think that's how I'm going to start my show tonight. Memo to the media.
There you go.
I'm going to start at memo to the media tonight. And I'm going to say, these are the things, if this is so important, we're going to ask Donald Trump Jr. tonight every question I could possibly think of. And then I want you people to start doing your job. Because you're all lazy, overpaid, and a bunch of Russian-obsessed maniacs. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Jay Sekulow, American Center for Law and Justice, their chief counsel to the president, as we continue.
60theanswer.com.
All right, as we continue, Jay Sekulow, chief counsel, American Center for Law and Justice, also counsel to the president. One question I know the media will get around to, although I doubt they'll do it with Hillary and the Ukraine and the Democratic Party and the DNC, and what I think is a matter that went far deeper and information was exchanged, or I doubt they'll ask Barack Obama about trying to unseat Prime Minister Netanyahu and influence that election. But putting all that aside, the question will go, what did the president know and when did he know it?
Well, look, I mean, I think they're going to all ask that question, but the fact is, what we say that was very clear without any question, and that is, what do we know? The president was not aware and did not attend the meeting, period. So I think, as has been said, he was recently informed of this, very recently by his lawyers, and I'm one of the lawyers, that's what happened. This is no great secret.
Is there any reaction the president had? What did he say? Just roll his eyes or what?
I mean, the president is having to deal. Look, I mean, there's a lot of issues going on in the world today, as you know. So let's be really, really clear here. The president is running the interests of the United States. This is getting a lot of media attention. It's not getting a lot of attention from him, nor should it. The president is focused on a lot of issues, including North Korea, the Middle East, and a lot of developments there.
Can you tell us how it's possible? There's this recent report. We now see it's making its way through Congress and the respective committees. 125 intelligence leaks in 126 days. Is it fair to say that that's 125 felonies committed?
Yeah, because the leaking of information, especially that kind of information, are felonies. But I mean, the fact that that's happening every day, and we're not going. The whole country's not saying this is an outrage, but that is the outrage. There is no reason or basis upon which those kind of leaks would be acceptable anywhere. And by the way, if you took all of President Obama's leaks during the same period of time and President Bush and added them together, this was 7 times the amount. Well, even the New York Times said unprecedented amount of leaks.
It really is. I mean, it is unprecedented. Yeah. And why hasn't it stopped?
Also, Sean, because you got to get into the deep state here and deal with this. But let me say one thing. The president has made very clear. He said it today that he applauds Don Jr.'s transparency. And that's right. He put it all out publicly. The decision was made to do it by his lawyers, I'm sure, in consultation with his lawyers. That's how you do these things. And he put it all out there. So I think that's the president's statement, and I think that's right.
Yeah, he said, I applaud my son's transparency. Even Jonathan Turley said it may not be the smartest thing to have met with this lady, but it's certainly not a crime.
Not illegal. Right. Exactly.
And isn't that so? Will Don Jr. and all these?
That's what they don't want to ignore. They want to ignore the fact that the law doesn't support an allegation of criminality. That's what the left doesn't want to see.
Because really, aren't they just looking for any type of crime? Is there, and here's a question I have. If Donald Trump himself, the president, as he was campaigning, if he was colluding with Vladimir, I guess he wouldn't really need his son to be meeting with a woman who says she might have some information to pass on.
Well, look, I mean, the whole collusion theory, first of all, there's not a criminal statute on collusion. I mean, I keep saying, what's the statute involved here? That's what you look at as a lawyer. What law's been violated? And this meeting is not a violation of a law, period. There's no illegality in the meeting, period.
All right, Jay Sekulow, counsel for the president, chief counsel, American Center for Law and Justice. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate you being with us as always.